Hi there, crafty friends. It's Diane, the Creative Inkster. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. Running a few minutes behind and hoping that you weren't sitting here waiting for me. But it is What's Up Wednesday, and I wanted to focus today on this celebration stamp set called In the Country. There are 2 stamps that come with it, and there's a couple of things about the stamps. Ooh, I always keep in my case some of the things I started playing with to use again. But there are 2 stamps in this set. One that goes landscape and one that goes more portrait in orientation. And I love these stamps, and I challenge those sometimes to figure out how to use them in ways that don't require me to do a lot of coloring in them, because that's not really what I like to do. I like to use them and make quick cards with them. So I've come up with a couple of ideas that I shared with my team earlier this month that I would like to share with you. So we will start with this one. Now, if you're watching live, please let me know you're here. And if you're watching the replay, leave a note. We'll communicate that way. But it's really nice for me to know when folks are out there joining me along this crafting creative journey. So a couple things about putting your stamps on. So when you get a stamp set, you get the either, if it's red rubber, you get the stamp part, and then you get a sheet of labels. In this case, there's just 2 stamps in the set, and then you can put them on, so your labels on there. Some people don't put their labels on. I like to. Our new ones are called Cling, and they really do cling quite well. The older ones that were a clear, I believe is the name that they called them, they did not stick well to blocks. And we do have a product, which I'd happy to share with you, hi Brenda, that shows you how to add little strips of extra cling so that they will stick to your blocks nicely. So I'm using this block, which is size E, nice size. Could also use my Stamparatus, but this is going to work well. And I can see which way is up and all of that because I have my stamp sticker on there. All right, so here are the pieces that we're going to work with on the first card. So yeah, this one. Okay, so I've got a piece of cardstock, which is 4 1/4 by 11, and I've scored it at 5 1/2, which is the middle point. I'm going to fold it. Normally I would have done it sort of upwards this way. This is the card that we are doing. Only I had a piece sitting in my stash that opens this way, so it works perfectly. It's still half a sheet. So I'm going to burnish this guy. On my original sample, I had a piece of white on the inside, but I'm going to use a different greeting, so I won't be stamping on the inside. Then you're going to need a piece of 3 3/4 by 5. This is what we're going to do our stamping on, and 4 by 5 1/4. So these 2 pieces will layer together. The crumb cake is 4 by 5 1/4. The basic white is 3 3/4 by 5. We'll do our stamping on the white. And then I've die cut a couple with some of our stitched rectangles dies, and they measure approximately 3 3/4 by 2 1/2 and 4 and a smidge by 2 3/4, and they kind of layer in together like that. But you could just cut your paper, it's fine. What you're looking for is the layers so that it will hide the big mess we're going to create behind this layer here, and I'm going to show you what I mean by all of that. And then I just need a piece for my greeting. All right, so let's do the clean stamping first. So like I said, I didn't want to do a lot of coloring with this. Sometimes we have stamps with some beautiful imagery on them, and they sort of scream at you, please color me. And I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to use them as is. So I'm using my soft succulent ink, which matches my card base. I'm going to ink this guy up, and you'll notice when I have a large stamp like this, I turn it face up on the table, and I use the ink pad that way instead of this way. I find that I get way better coverage if I do it that way. Now I'm going to center this over my stitched rectangle layer. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going in to try to get it as even as possible. And there we go. That's beautifully done. And then I want to add in the background some of the stamp on the left and the right and the bottom. So we're going to make a bit of a mess. The center is going to be messy. I'm going to ink it up just exactly the same way. And this time I'm going to stamp on the 3 3/4 by 5 inch piece. I'm going to stamp on the bottom center. And I'm going to go off the page just slightly. So I'm centering left to right and sort of flush with the bottom, and I get this image here. When I get my crumb cake over top, part of that image is going to be hidden. So you see where I'm going with this. So we're going to ink up the stamp another time, and this time we're going to stamp on the left-hand side. I probably didn't have to ink it up entirely, but it was just kind of the way I went. This time I want to center it top to bottom against the left-hand side. Could have gone off the page a little bit more, but I've kind of got this mess in the middle. It's not going to matter because my crumb cake's going to hide it. And now I'm going to ink up on the right. Do the same thing. I'm centering top to bottom over on the right-hand side. And there we go. So that is 3 bits of stamping, bottom, left, and right, with the same image. Nice big mess in the center. Totally fine. We're going to layer the small stitched rectangle onto the larger one. So I'll close the ink pad or no, I can just tuck it away here. So let's grab our adhesive and layer this directly down like this. Oops, right side up. Like this. So I'm going to center it on the other stitched rectangle. And then I'm going to take the messy one and I'm going to glue it onto the matted crumb cake. About 1 inch in each corner and 1 inch in the center is what I tell my Stampin' ladies, so that you don't waste your adhesive unnecessarily. On a card, paper to paper, it's going to stick quite fine. And then I'm going to do the same thing here onto the card base. There we go. So no popping up until this stage. Now I'm going to stick this on here, and like I said, I could have gone a little further on the edges there, but that's fine. I'm going to grab some dimensionals, and we'll put 1 in each corner on the back of the stitched crumb cake rectangle. There we go. Center this, and you'll see that makes a really lovely card with lots of layer, lots of dimension, lots of stuff going on, but minimal work. And then I had put a piece of this ribbon, which I've had for a little while. It's from the annual catalog called Natural Finish Ribbon. And I'd put a piece here, and I'd actually tried to stamp directly on it. Soft Succulent was far too light. It didn't take well, but I think if I'd used a darker color like Early Espresso, it would have done well. So I did have that on there, but this time I'm just going to work on my cardstock here. And I'm using Seaside Bay because I want to use it on both cards, and I like Thank You for Everything for this one. So let's find that stamp. There we go. And I'll grab a smaller block. Just put it on the table and pick it up from there. That way it goes on evenly without puckering. And just because I'm in the habit of flipping it over like that, I'm going to stick this on here. And I'm not too concerned where I'm going to stamp it because I'm going to hand cut it out with scissors. And I don't have scissors right handy, so I have to get up and reach behind me. Alrighty, so I'm going to hand cut this out, which doesn't have to be as scary sounding as that. You just kind of work your way around the letters and give it a nice finished edge, about even all the way around. You can go in and out. There's sort of a straight edge here with going around the Y and the G. And just keep it going and fluid. And we can put it there. Actually, maybe I will add a little bit of ribbon, just because I realize it's going to look a little lost on there. So let me get my ribbon scissors. This can fray a little on the edges. It's just that kind of ribbon. So I've got this here. Probably don't need quite as much. Maybe I'll actually cut it flush instead of on an angle. There we go. Alrighty, and this can go down with a couple of glue dots or tear and tape, which I don't have handy right here. I have it sitting at the other station. Brand new package of glue dots with a fancy little piece of tape holding them in place here. All right. Add a couple of glue dots to the back of the ribbon. And that will hold it in place there. I'd kind of wrapped the other one around the edge. I'm just going to stick it there. And then I'm going to pop this up on dimensionals. And that is simple. Simple and done. So what do you think of this idea of beautiful stamping and using it, but not necessarily a lot of cutting in or coloring or that? And we have these sequins, enamel dot essentials they're called, from the new mini, and there are 120 in here. Hi Glenda, thank you. And there's some white and some crumb cake, and I want to say that's actually Night of Navy. At first I thought it was black, just in my room here. That's kind of what they look like. But I'm going to use the crumb cake ones. And I'm just going to put a couple of them on the card to kind of add some interest as well. Kind of fit, they kind of, with this neutral theme or field theme. There we go. So there we are, a very simple card. Here's my original, without any coloring required. Sometimes you do. You want to sit there and you want to color and you want the time to do that. And sometimes you want to do a fairly quick and easy card. And that's what I was going for with these ones. So there's that. I'm going to clean our stamp because I'm using the same block here. This is cleaner. Thanks, Brenda. I appreciate it. I hope people who bought the In the Country stamp, or sorry, selected the In the Country stamp set for Celebration see this and get a couple of interesting ideas. Because sometimes you get a stamp set and you're just never quite sure what to do with it. Here's my second sample, and I'm going to use the other stamp in the set and do the same idea but in horizontal. So I'm going to give you the idea, but I'm going to change it right up, which is the beauty of card making. So what I've used here is the stamp in the middle, so you'll see it like this. I've used the brick and mortar 3D embossing folder, a sprinkling of some copper embossing powder that I heat set, and I'm actually going to sprinkle even less than I show on here, and then a little greeting. So this one is quite a wow card, I think. So this is the stairs with the leaves and greenery around it stamp in this set. All right, so I've done it in a few stages so that I can move along quickly and show you the different steps. So what you need is a card base. I've got Petal Pink. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 and folded in the middle. It's your standard card. We're going to make it in the portrait orientation. I've got a piece of Mossy Meadow. That's going to be my mat. And I've got a piece of basic white. Oh, Mossy Meadow is 4 by 5 1/4, and the white mat, the white stamping layer is 3 3/4 by 5. So this time I'm going to use, again, one ink pad, except for when we get to the heat embossing. I'm using soft suede. Once again, I'll turn my stamp over so I get really good coverage with ink on it. At the back of that ink pad. And I'm going to place this basically in the middle, a little bit towards the bottom. And again, you can use a Stamparatus so you know you've got good coverage. I've done this a few times, so I'm pretty confident with my ability to ink it up and get it where I want it to land. So there's the stamp. And by the magic of television, I've gone over to the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and I've grabbed my brick and mortar embossing folder, which kind of comes, when you look at it, this way. So you just have to turn it this way with the fold to the right, and then that gets your bricks going across. I've run this through, and this is what my card looks like afterwards. So I've embossed over a stamped image, which looks nice on its own, but it needs more. So the next step is to take a Versamark ink pad, and you're going to drag it over top to add some of this sticky Versamark clear ink, and then we're going to sprinkle some copper embossing powder. You could use any. Gold would work nicely as well, but I'm going to use the copper. There's this little piece of cardstock in there. So just like any other heat embossing, you want to move fairly quickly with this process. So I took my Versamark, holding it in my hand. I'm just going to drag it across my image. I wanted to let it dry first. I didn't want the ink to be at all wet because I didn't want to streak it. And I moved my Versamark out of the way because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten powder on it. So now I'm going to take the powder, and normally we would sprinkle it maybe with a spoon or that. I'm going to literally do the pinch method. So just like I'm in with cayenne pepper in the kitchen, I'm just pinching a little bit on there so I don't get too much. This will make your stuff go a long way for sure. And it just makes it look a little dirty, but it's got the shininess of the copper. So we sprinkle that on, and then we head over to the heat emboss tool, and you want to heat emboss it on the front and on the back side. That helps it melt in nicely and doesn't have it bow up too much. So again, through the magic of television, we have one completed. But look at that. It's very faint. It's very light. Even compared to my sample, where I was a little heavier handed, it's even lighter, and I really, really, really like it. So very simple, quick technique. And we can add this to the card mat. We're out of Stamp and Seal there, so let's grab the next one. An inch in every corner, an inch in the middle, and then stick that onto your mossy meadow mat or whatever color you've chosen, and then onto a card base. Once again, I'm not popping this up, going super simple. But how easy would it be to whip cards up with this quick technique? And then I want to add a greeting. So from the stitched rectangles, we have one that measures a little under 2.5, maybe 2 3/8 by 1 1/8, or a smidge over 1. And this will be perfect for Heartfelt Sympathy from the Seaside Bay stamp set. I think that's a good greeting for this, the look and feel of this card. I'll grab my block. Here it is. Better clean up that stamp first before I get too carried away. So that was the thanks for everything. Thank you for everything. And now we're going to do Heartfelt Sympathy. I've already die cut. Usually I don't. I stamp first and die cut out. But I'm going to go with this. I'm going to use the same Mossy Meadow. Would have been a good choice, but I'm going to use soft suede on this as well. That's centered on my grid paper so I can see where I'm going with it. And there's my Heartfelt Sympathy. And I cut a piece of Petal Pink that's just a titch bigger to give it a little bit of a matte. There isn't actually a die that perfectly is a mat for this in that set. So I've just cut a piece of cardstock. And I'm going to grab my adhesive. We'll glue this down. And then just to add a little bit of ribbon, just something really subtle. Actually, I think maybe I'll put this one up here. To add a little bit here, I have the polyester petal pink. And I only have a small amount left. But it's great to add just a tiny bit. So this is what? 3 inches, if that. This is really nice ribbon. It's super soft and just beautiful to the touch. Folds gorgeous. There's 5 yards, I think, in this one, isn't there? 5? I don't know if it's 10. Well, there are 10 yards. 10 yards in this one. So to do this, I'm going to fold it in the middle, but I'm going to grab a glue dot first. There they are. And I'm going to stick a glue dot in the center. And fold it over a little bit off center. You could easily just cut 2 separate pieces, but I just tend to do that. I'll put a couple of glue dots on the back, and that will place it right where I want it on my label. Hey, you. There we go. Just like this. It's going to be on the left-hand side, so I'm going to have to slip this up here on the right. But now I'm going to put some dimensionals on it to hold it in place, because with the ribbon, I do need a little bit of height. It'll otherwise look a little bit askew, and I want to go with it being the same all the way around. So what I want to do is cut a little of these excess pieces that are on the edge, little edge pieces, and put them around my ribbon so that, technically speaking, everything will be around the same height. Come on, you. There we go. And we'll stick this up here. And that's a lovely, understated, simple, and quite easy. Oops, a little crooked though. Quite easy to make sympathy card with a free stamp set that came through Celebration. So here are the 2 cards that I made tonight. I hope you like this idea of how to use these larger stamps really simply. Hi Mark, you'll have to watch how these turned out. And how to use your In the Country stamp set. I really encourage this one as a celebration choice. I mean, it's a free stamp set, and how often would you take something that just has 2 stamps in it, and you can do a lot with them. And you can color them in if you want, you can sponge around them, you can do all kinds of things. But you can also use them to make really simple cards this way. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I shall see you next week. Take good care. Bye now.